Okay, one of the tasks that we have to do with this 68 Olds convertible is do a brake upgrade on it. And the customer has purchased a kit from a local company here in Mooresville, North Carolina called Master Power Brakes. And this is a pretty complete kit. It comes with everything you need. This is a power brake kit, so it's got your power booster with a master cylinder. Also comes with a proportioning valve kit with a new valve and all the hardware to install it. Lines to connect it to the master cylinder. We've got new brake hoses. And this is a line kit for the vacuum supply to the power booster. It also comes with the brackets that will bolt to the stock spindles. So this does use the stock spindles that are on the car. So you're not having to separate your spindles and worry about springs flying out of the car. And then we've got some brackets here that will bolt to the adapter brackets to mount the calipers. So we got some new calipers, all the hardware to install them, new seals for the hubs of our new rotors. We've got two brand new rotors, got your brake pads, so it's got everything you need to convert from a drum brake system to a power brake system. Comes complete with all the instructions, and the first thing that you should always do when you're unboxing a kit is go through your list of parts that are supposed to be in the kit and make sure you have everything here before you get started, because you don't want to be halfway through the job and realize that you don't have this hardware kit, or you're missing this clip or this adapter that you need to install something. So always go through your parts lists, make sure you got everything you got here. It comes with 3 different instruction sets. One is specific for installing the proportioning valve onto your power brake booster. Another is for installation of the power brake booster into the car. And the third set would be for installing all the bracketry to mount your calipers and everything else to finish up your system. So a really nice system. This is pretty much a stock disc brake system. This car is not really high performance car. Pretty base. They just want to upgrade to disc brakes, which will give them better stopping power. But Master Power Brakes has kits to suit all your needs. If you're looking for something a little bit more high performance, they've got bigger brake systems, they've got aluminum calipers, they've got 6-piston calipers, they've got it all. So they've got rear disc brake kits also if you wanted to go to 4-wheel disc brakes. So check out Master Power Brakes, and I'll put all their information down below in the description for this video, and it'll have a link that you can go and check out their website. They have kits for just about everything and anything out there. If they don't have one, they may be able to make one for you. So what do you think, Ashton? You like all our new parts we got?
Yeah.
It looks like a pretty good kit, huh?
Yeah, I want to talk.
What you going to talk about? What is that?
It's the brake.
That's the brake booster.
Brake booster, and we got some up and down thingy.
That's what connects to the pedal inside the car that you push with your foot.
And we got this, and we got this connected to the this gold thingy.
Yep, this is where you put all your brake fluid in that pushes to all the wheels.
And this is where you open the yellow thingy right here. Yeah, but I need to put it back.
Yeah? Alright, some pretty nice parts, huh?
Yeah,
so what do you say we get to work on this car and start taking it apart so we can put all these nice new parts on this car?
Yeah, I'm there.
You ready to go?
Yeah.
Alright, let's go.
Okay. Oh.
So one of the things I wanted to do before installation of the brake kit is a little bit of prep work and getting my rotors and wheel bearings all ready to go. So I got my new rotors unpackaged and my brand new wheel bearings, so you don't have to worry about cleaning anything. Everything's nice and new. So we're going to go ahead and pack the wheel bearings, and what I like to do is just take a little bit of wheel bearing grease and to apply some to the race surface where the bearing is going to ride at on the inside of the hub. Give it a little bit of extra looby-dooby in there. And I do have a wheel bearing packer. This is a nice tool. Saves you a lot of time in packing wheel bearings. There is a manual way to do it. You put a little bit of grease in your palm and you rub the bearing like this in the grease, and it'll eventually work its way up through the bearing. But with this, you just pop it in there, the top on, give it a squeeze, and all your grease is right there. So it's a time saver. Do the inner. That was the outer. We're going to do the inner one now. Alright. So you just gotta get the grease to squeeze out through the inside and come out the other end. You really don't have to get too excessive with the amount of grease. There's a big debate on whether or not to pack the inside of the bearing full of grease, and I've just never seen anything conclusive that says one way is better than the other. I don't tend to do that, so we're not going to pack the inside. You may disagree with me, you may not. That's fine. Either way, I've never had an issue with it not being packed. I've seen them go bad with them being packed. So we got new hub seals also, and these always go with this open end towards the bearing surface. It's also tapered, which so when it slides on, it can push down and seal against the spindle. So we're just going to take this on here. Again, another tool that's fairly inexpensive to have, that saves time, saves headache. This is a wheel bearing race installation tool. As you can see, it's tapered. It's really for installing the inner part of these bearings that go in here when you have to replace them. You put it on there, your race sits around there, and you bang those, knock those into the hubs. But for installing seals, flip it around, make sure it hangs over the edge of the seal, because it's important that the seal goes in flat. You don't want to get it cocked and have it get warped in there. So you just want to make sure you've got a nice level surface. Give it a couple of whacks and it sets in there nice and flat. That's pretty much what you want to see, is it flat all the way around. Ask me how I know it needs to be in that way. When I was just starting out and was given a chance to work in a local garage in the town I grew up in, Bear, if you're watching, I remember this. One job I was given was to put new seals in some rear hubs on a truck, and I was 13 years old at the time. I hadn't had really any experience, and I took the seals and I just took a hammer and I whacked them in there. Well, they were in. The problem was they weren't flat. They were warped, they were crooked. So once they got back on the truck, it didn't take long for it to start leaking. So lesson learned. It's something that I've never forgotten. This is 40 years later and I still remember that. So I appreciate the chance I was given by the Bear in Mooresville, Pennsylvania. Gave me my first job in a shop. But anyhow, back to this. So the other thing we need to do is just take some brake cleaner and give these a little spritz here, because they do come with a oil on them to keep them from rusting. Just give them a good wipe, and we'll take our other side, flip it over, and again we're going to take some grease and just lay some inside our race there. Just a coating on top of that wheel bearing race where that bearing's going to ride at. Don't need to get it anywhere else. Pop in our outer wheel bearing and just kind of work that grease down around it. Now both the hubs are ready to go, so when we come to the part of putting the rotors on, I'm not having to stop and go and do this task. I can just come grab them, put them right on the car, nuts and washers on, everything's ready to go. Okay, so we're going to disassemble the original drum brakes off the car so we can get all our new brackets and everything assembled onto the car and install the disc brake kit here. So the first thing we got to do is remove this dust cap, and I usually can just use a pair of channel lock pliers and just wiggle the cap back and forth and it pops off. Next I'll use a pair of dikes here and undo our cotter pin, get it out of the way. Back to our adjustable pliers, loosen up our nut. And the drum simply slides off. Shed some light on the situation here. To remove this brake assembly, one of the things we need to do is undo our brake line from our flexible hose that's in here. You always want to use a flare wrench. It's a special wrench. Grips more of the nut, so it doesn't want to strip. Fortunately, these hoses have been replaced on these drum brakes, so these lines are not frozen in there. Sometimes the flare nuts get frozen into the hoses, or more likely it's the flare nut gets frozen and rusted to the line itself. You'll end up spinning the entire tube and it breaks, and you have to either fabricate a new line, which I showed you how to do in a video on the F350 project, or you can buy replacement pre-bent line kits and replace all your lines. So go ahead and get this out of here, and I'll get my drain pan. Alright, line is off. Now there's a clip that holds the hose to the bracket. And you just gotta get something in there and pry it out. That's the clip, sort of a U-shaped clip, just slides in a groove on the hose and holds it to the bracket on the frame rail. That'll leave our line undone. So then we have 3 bolts that hold the entire backing plate assembly with all the shoes and everything attached to it to the spindle. We got 1 up here and 2 lower ones. So I'm going to go ahead and undo these. This little bracket here is like a locking bracket. keeps that bolt from working loose over time. Go ahead and undo these. Here it comes. These lower ones have nuts on the backs of them. Right in the pan. That allows this to pull off all in one assembly. So as you can see here too, the steering arm that attaches to the tie rod also is held on with those bolts. So give our spindle a little wipe down and get all this old grease off and dirt fell on here. And then I'll go get the parts that need to be put on. Okay, so in the kit that I showed you all the parts for earlier is a bracket. This is the caliper. This is part of the caliper mounting system. So this bracket is specific per side, and they have different part numbers. So in your list of parts, it has the part number and it tells you which side is which. The calipers mount on the back side, and this is where the other bracket attaches to, so this is going to mount this way, and it comes with all the hardware. So these bolts are two different sizes, and it specifies that the shorter bolt should go in the front of this kit. So you just want to get it in that hole there, make sure you get the steering arm lined up. Back one, again, line up your steering arm, 2 bolts. We got 2 washers, flat washers that go on here, and then these are nylock nuts, so there's no other type of a mechanical means to keep the nut from coming loose, or it doesn't need Loctite on it. So we'll get these started on here. I'm going to go ahead and run these down with the air gun just to get them snugged up. Now the instructions do specify 95 foot-pound to torque these bolts to, so we're going to go ahead and use our torque wrench. It's set at 95. go. Front one. There we go. Now the next bolts that we put in are going to be the brackets for the secondary caliper mounting bracket, and they get torqued to 55 foot-pounds. So I reset my torque wrench and have it ready. Okay, so this bracket can go on either way. It's a universal, and these bolts will go in from the back side of this bracket, and it requires a spacer. It comes with an aluminum spacer. It slides on there. Now, being as these bolts do not have any lock washers that come with them, I am going to apply some Loctite to the threads just to be on the safe side that nothing comes loose. That one started. Bolt, get our spacer on there, a little bead of Loctite on there, position that, go ahead and turn our steering some. Go ahead and torque these to 55 foot-pounds. Alright. So it's very simple to put these brackets on. They have done the research. They know these things are going to fit. The instructions tell you that you may have to relieve this steering arm just slightly if there's interference on the back side. All you do is just relieve enough of it with a grinder to make clearance so that the bracket will attach properly. So I'm going to go get the rotor, get a rotor put on. Alright. Remember, I had these all ready to go. So all I do is go grab it, slide it on, make sure it's set in all the way. And these kits really are complete. They come with new washers and new spindle nuts. Comes with everything. If you like that look of the drilled and slotted rotors, they have rotors that come drilled and slotted for that performance look. Don't really know how much more it really adds to it, other than they look cool. So we're going to go ahead and just slowly snug this down. Get on there by hand a little further. Just want to snug it. Give it a spin and make sure it spins free, not too much drag. A little more. And preloading the bearing is what this is called. And the spindle has 2 spots in it for the cotter pin. So once you get it preloaded, you can give it a little bit more. Get your hole lined up where the pin needs to go. Give it another check. Let's do it. Whoop. Got our new cotter pin. We'll go right in there.
Papa,
Yes, sir.
this needs to be changed.
Yep.
Yeah, the oil. See? Papa,
Yes.
this is being changed.
That needs to be changed?
Yeah.
All right, we will look into that. So when you're doing a cotter pin, you only want to fold over half of the split pin. You fold it up, knock it over, take the other half, and take your dikes and just give it a... My hands aren't as strong as they used to be. Give it a cut so that it's not going to interfere with the dust cap. I gotta find the dust cap.
Yep, we need to find the dust cap. A cat?
Cap, what do I do with the dust cap?
Where is it?
I don't know. Okay, found my dust cap. And unfortunately, like a lot of other things we use today, these caps are made from China. So they're a little difficult to get on. They're supposed to be tight because you don't want them to come off. So you just gotta have to work the cap on slowly. This one's gonna be difficult. You don't want to tap or hammer it on the outer edge of this cap, the rounded part, because all you're going to do is smash it in, and then it's not going to go on right. So what I'm trying to do is hammer around this edge, this lip here, and work it a little bit at a time so it goes in nice and even. Once it starts to go, it'll work itself around. There we go. Alright, now that's set there nice and tight. Okay, so the next thing we need to install is our brake caliper. And we have to put our pads in the caliper so it's loaded. This pad goes to the outside. It's got little tabs that hook onto the ears on the caliper. And then obviously our other pad fits in here like so, and it comes with a spring. I'm not crazy about these springs. These are not like the original ones. The original ones kind of held the pad in there, but this just kind of sits in there. So you want to make sure these little slides are all the way out. And get our caliper on. And these can be a little tricky on these calipers. The ear here, I don't know if you probably can't see this, bring you in a little closer. This ear on the pad has to sit on top of the pin, and then the pin goes through a hole on this other pad and slides into a hole here on this ear. The threads that hold the slider bolt are on this rear ear on the caliper. So that's where threading is. So you have to get all that lined up.
Oh, I get that on there.
And then get the threads started so you're not cross-threading anything. Alright, got that thread started there now. Run this in. Just give that a good snug. There's no torque setting for it. I'm sure there's a torque setting for it somewhere, but give it a good snug. Alright, so that leaves our caliper on. Next thing to go on is our flexible line. So this line has two ends. This end has a fitting that's called a banjo fitting, and it has a special bolt called a banjo bolt. And this bolt has small holes in the top side of it and then a hole through the center. And that allows the fluid to flow through the bolt. So what we need to do with this, since our hose is flexing this way, we'll want to use this as our top side. And it uses two copper washers, one on this side, one on the bottom side, and that'll seal it once it's tightened in there. And this screws into the back side of our caliper. You won't be able to see this, but trust me, it does. Alright, so I just hand tightened that. Now the other end of our hose has a flare fitting, a female flare fitting. So we just put that up inside of our frame bracket. We can use the original brackets. The kit does come with new ones, but there's nothing wrong with these. They work just fine. And what I found was easier to do on these is to get your fittings started before you put the clip in that attaches the hose to the frame, because it may want to be not in the right position. So if you get that hand started, then you can put your bracket in. Kit even comes with new clips to hold the hoses, so we'll get that started in there and just use a hammer. Set the clip. Again, we'll use our flare wrench, our nuts, tube nuts. Sometimes that hose wants to turn, so you'll hold that bottom part. Tighten up your tube nut. Snug up tighten up our banjo bolt on the back. Again, I'm sure there's a torque setting for these, but when you've done this for as many years as I have, you know where to stop with it. And that shouldn't have that tight. So that leaves all the front conversion stuff done. We've got our rotors, calipers, new hoses on, so everything's ready to go. Next thing we're going to do is move topside to the brake booster and master cylinder and get that changed out. Okay, so the next task in this disc brake conversion is going to be the installation of the new power booster master cylinder combination and the combination valve that comes with our kit. Now this vehicle has a combination valve in it from the factory, but because this was a four-wheel drum brake car, it doesn't have the required pieces in that valve to make the system work properly as far as brake lockup. So as you can see up here, might be a little hard to see, but up in there is the original, what they would call a proportioning valve or a combination valve, and that one will be eliminated from the vehicle. So we are going to instead, we'll come back here to our parts bench, and we're going to use this new combination valve. It comes with a bracket that'll mount it to the power brake booster, so it'll bring it up away from the exhaust, and it comes with some various adapters and fittings that will be needed. New plug for the brake switch that's on the dash, It has instructions that have a lot of good information about just what a combination valve does as far as the brake pressures and how they're applied. So we've got everything we need here. I just need to figure out, there may be some lines I need to fabricate. I'm not sure yet, so we'll look into that as we get to it. So I'm going to go ahead and start disassembling. I'm going to disassemble everything now and get the old valve out and see how the lines will come together under there as far as using these fittings to tie everything back together, because all the new valve is going to mount up higher, and we don't want to leave that one on the car because that could really cause an issue with the brake pressure on the vehicle. So I'm going to get to work on this, and I'll bring you back after I can get something to show you. Okay, as you can see, I've got the old proportioning valve out, and I ended up taking out the line that goes to this front brake here because it was just going to be easier to do that way. I've got one of the adapters in here. This is a splitter valve, just a splitter. So the line will come down from the master cylinder, goes in the top here and splits it between the two front brakes. So I'm going to make up a new line to go from here over to this right, or the left front brake, mainly because, well, two reasons. It's a short line and I've got some tubing sitting around, and two, the fitting that went in the proportioning valve on the original one had a large flare nut, and this I need a smaller flare nut for this T-fitting here. So it's just easier to make a line, and then I've got to figure out how to join the two rear, I don't know if you can see that, join the two rear line pieces together. I know it's dark under here, but I'm doing the best I can. I gotta figure out how I'm going to join those together, whether or not I gotta change some flare nuts, or if I can find the correct adapter pieces to just join the lines together. Okay, just to bring you up to speed where I'm at with stuff, I went ahead and pulled out the inner fender on the left side, as you can see, and because getting access to the mounting bolts back here on the original booster is not easy. These two come out within 2 minutes. The one back here come out pretty quick, but this back lower inner one, I struggled. There's really no way to get in there on it, so I took out the inner fender so I can gain more access to work in here. Plus it also made it easier for me to change the booster out, be able to get my lines set in where they need to be, and refabricated. I had to change an end on this line. I found that I had to make an end and put my union together for my rear brake line, which is this one. And it's also going to make it easier because one of the other things I need to do on this car is change the exhaust. We're putting headers on here, so having the inner fender out of the way, and I'll probably end up taking the passenger side one off too. It's going to make putting the exhaust on that much easier. So now I just have to get my, there's a rod that goes through the firewall to the pedal. I have to get the length on it set, cut it, put the end on, connect it to the pedal, get my my two lines connecting my master cylinder to the combination valve on, bleed the system out, and the brake job will be finished. Alright, I've got my brake booster, master cylinder, combination valve assembly installed, and I've got my rod inside for the pedal cut to length and that installed, so I've got good pedal travel and still makes contact with the brake switch, so that'll be working good. One thing I wanted to touch on here was it's always important to look at all the instructions before you install the parts. Yeah, I've been doing this a long time, so you know, sometimes you think you know everything, but some companies like to do things a little different. So what I ran into on this was this combination valve here in the instruction packet that comes with this line kit shows this valve installed the opposite way. Okay, so it's got the front circuit back here, and it's got the rear outlet circuit up here. And what happens is this line would then cross. These two lines are supposed to cross. So your front reservoir feeds would feed the back for the front circuit, which requires more fluid because it's a disc brake setup. And then the rear reservoir would feed the front inlet, which would be for the rear brakes because it requires less fluid. So these lines would have crossed. Now I made them work because there was enough tubing where I could manipulate them to just go direct front to front, rear to rear. It worked out better going in this way for my original lines to hook into this, so in the end it doesn't really matter. Ease of installation would have been to put it in the other way, but we made it work. It's in. I've got the master all bled. I'm going to go ahead and get the brakes bled now and see what kind of brake pedal we can get out of the car. Okay, we got everything back together for the brakes. That's going to be the end of this video on doing a disc brake conversion to a GM car. Again, if you have any questions, just drop me a comment and I'll try and answer it for you. But always buy a good quality kit like the one we got from Master Power Brakes. It comes with all the parts and pieces you needed. The only thing we had to get was some brake fluid, and that's going to leave this ready to go on the street. The only thing we've got left to do is give the car a test drive. But before we could do that, we had to do a couple other things to the car. We had some transmission leaks to fix. And I mentioned earlier about fixing the coil spring on this side. Well, we've had to end up replacing both the front coil springs because lowering springs in this car with big wheels is not a mix. Once the car was set down, there was no clearance here between the tire and the fender well. So we put stock springs back in it, hopefully going to raise the ride height back up, and we can take this car out for a test drive. So thanks again for following along on this segment of the Cutlass improvements, and I'll see you again soon.